Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a really key part of ISO IEC 27000 1.2022.
That's right.
It's all about ensuring your information security management system, your ISMS, doesn't just, sit there. It needs to thrive.
Exactly. We're looking at Clause 10, improvement. It's what makes the whole thing sustainable.
So think of us as your guides today. We want to help you understand how to make your ISMS, well, truly alive.
Absolutely. Clause 10 is where it stops being just a framework on paper and becomes a dynamic process. Always learning, always growing.
We're going to break down the two main parts, right?
Yeah. First, continual improvement, that's 10.1. And then we'll get into nonconformity and corrective action, 10.2.
And the goal here is really practical insights for you, our listener. How to genuinely boost your security.
It's about empowerment, really. Not just ticking boxes, but proactively strengthening things, building resilience.
Okay, sounds good. So let's jump into that first section then. Continual improvement, 10.1. What's the big idea here?
Well, the core concept is pretty straightforward. Your ISMS isn't a one-and-done project.
Right.
It's an ongoing cycle, always making things better. The standard specifically says the organization needs to continually improve the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the ISMS.
Like tending a garden, maybe.
Yeah.
You don't just plant it and leave.
That's a great analogy, actually. You've got to keep nurturing it so it flourishes. Constant attention.
The suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness. Those terms feel important. Can we unpack those a bit? What do they mean in, practical terms?
Sure. So suitability is about fit. Does the ISMS actually match your organization's context, its goals, the specific risks you face? Is it the right kind of system for you?
Okay, context matters. Makes sense.
Then adequacy. That's about having all the necessary components, the right policies, procedures, controls, enough resources, have you got everything you need?
Got it. Resources, too.
And finally, effectiveness. This is the bottom line, really. Is your ISMS actually doing what it's supposed to do? Is it protecting your information effectively?
Yeah.
Is it working?
So it needs to be the right fit, have all the parts, and actually work. And that word continually is key, isn't it? It's not set and forget.
Absolutely not. That's a crucial point. Think about how fast things change.
Yeah, constantly.
New threats pop up, technology evolves, maybe your own business objectives shift. Continual improvement makes sure your ISMS doesn't get left behind. It's about building that habit, that proactive mindset of always looking for ways to refine things.
That totally makes sense. You wouldn't rely on, say, 5-year-old antivirus definition.
Exactly. Same idea for your whole management system.
So for the listener, it's about embedding this continuous enhancement idea into everyday security work. What are the payoffs for doing that, the real long-term value?
Oh, the benefits are huge. An ISMS that's always improving, it becomes much more resilient, fewer incidents, less disruption if something does happen.
Okay.
Plus, it builds trust with clients, with partners. They see you're serious. Ultimately, it just leads to a more secure, more stable organization. You're investing smartly in the long run.
Right, investing in security and continuity. Okay, that gives us a really solid grasp on 10.1, the why of continual improvement.
Good.
Now let's shift gears to the other major part of Clause 10, nonconformity and corrective action. Section 10.2. First off, what exactly is a nonconformity in this context?
Simply put, it's when something doesn't meet a requirement. Any requirement.
Could be a requirement from the ISO standard itself?
Yep. Or it could be one from your own internal ISMS documents, maybe a policy you wrote or a procedure you defined. If something deviates from what's supposed to happen, that's a nonconformity.
So, if an employee keeps ignoring a security step they're supposed to follow.
That's one example.
Or maybe a vulnerability scan finds a server that wasn't patched when it should have been.
Exactly. Both are nonconformities. And when you find one, the standard is quite specific about the steps you need to take.
Okay, what's step one?
Step one is react to the nonconformity immediately.
React? What does that involve? The standard says things like control and correct it and deal with the consequences. Can you give us some examples?
Sure. Let's say you detect unauthorized access to a critical database.
Okay, bad situation.
Right. The immediate reaction, the control part, might be instantly blocking that access, maybe isolating the affected server.
Contain it.
Exactly. Then the correction would be figuring out how they got in and fixing that specific vulnerability and dealing with the consequences. Well, that could involve checking what data was seen or stolen, notifying people if needed, maybe restoring from a backup.
Makes sense. What about a less dramatic example, like a backup failing?
Good one. A failed backup is a nonconformity. The reaction is Figure out why it failed, maybe try running it again using a different method, ensure you get a good backup somehow. That's the immediate control and correction.
Okay, so it's about stopping the bleeding, fixing the immediate issue. Once you've done that initial reaction, what comes next?
The next really critical step is evaluating the need for corrective action. This is different from just fixing the symptom.
How so?
Corrective action is about digging deeper. It's about finding the root cause, the fundamental reason why the nonconformity happened in the first place.
The why.
Exactly.
Go
The
ahead.
goal is to eliminate that root cause so the problem doesn't just happen again, maybe somewhere else or in a slightly different way.
So this is where the real learning starts, right? Learning from the incident.
Yeah.
How do you actually do that evaluation? What's the process?
The standard lays out a few things. First, you have to properly review the nonconformity itself. Understand exactly what went wrong.
Get the facts straight.
Right. Second, determine the cause or causes. This often takes some real investigation. Was it a technical glitch, a flaw in a process, maybe someone wasn't trained properly? You need to get past the surface issue.
Find the underlying weakness.
Yes. And third, crucially, you need to determine if similar nonconformities exist elsewhere or if they could potentially occur. Look for patterns, systemic issues.
Okay, so it's like finding a hole in a fence. Don't just patch it. Figure out why the wood was rotten there and check the rest of the fence for similar weak spots.
That's a perfect way to put it. Once you've done that evaluation, found the root cause, considered if it could happen elsewhere, then you implement any necessary corrective actions.
And those actions could be varied.
Absolutely. Could be updating a policy, changing a procedure, putting in a new technical control, maybe doing more training, whatever addresses the root cause.
Okay, so you implement the fix. Is that it? Done.
Not quite. There's another vital step. Review the effectiveness of the corrective action.
Check if it actually worked.
Precisely. Did the fix solve the root cause? Is the nonconformity truly less likely to happen again? You need some way to verify this, maybe monitoring, follow-up audits, testing, whatever makes sense.
Makes total sense. Don't
Okay.
just assume the fix worked. And what's the very last piece of this process?
The final step loops back to improvement. It's making changes to the ISMS itself, if necessary. See, dealing with a nonconformity, especially figuring out the root cause and the fix, might reveal a deeper issue. Maybe a whole policy needs rethinking, or a core process needs an overhaul. This is where those individual stumbles really drive broader system improvement.
So mistakes, if handled right, genuinely make the whole system stronger.
That's the idea. They're valuable learning opportunities.
The standard also mentions corrective actions should be appropriate to the effects of the nonconformities encountered. What's the logic there?
It's basically about proportionality. Common sense. The amount of effort and resources you put into fixing something should match how big the problem was.
Right.
A minor issue with low impact probably needs a simpler fix than a massive data breach with huge consequences.
Got it. Sensible approach. And documentation is important here too, right? Keeping records.
Oh, absolutely crucial. You need to keep documented information records of what the nonconformities were, what actions you took, and critically, the results of those corrective actions, including that effectiveness review.
Why is that record keeping so vital?
Several reasons. First, it's your evidence. Evidence of due diligence, showing you take issues seriously and follow through. Auditors love to see this. Second, it builds organizational memory. You can track trends, see if certain problems keep recurring, learn from past mistakes. That data is gold for future improvements, for risk assessments. For you, the listener, it shows commitment.
So it's not just bureaucracy. It's about building that internal knowledge base to get smarter over time.
Exactly right. Turns incidents into institutional learning.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground on Clause 10. To really help our listeners lock this in, what are the absolute key takeaways? Continual improvement and nonconformity management.
Yeah, the big picture for Clause 10 is that improvement isn't an afterthought. It's core to the ISMS. Continual improvement, 10.1, is about that proactive mindset. Always looking to enhance suitability, adequacy, effectiveness.
Always getting better.
Right. And nonconformity and corrective action, 10.2, that's the structured way you learn from things that go wrong. It's a loop. Find it, fix it temporarily, understand the root cause, fix it properly, check the fix, and improve the system based on what you learned.
So moving beyond just having controls to fostering a culture that actually learns, adapts, and actively seeks to get better.
That's it. When you embrace these Clause 10 principles, your ISMS stops being static and becomes, like we said, a living system. It adapts, it strengthens.
Building that long-term security and resilience.
I couldn't have said it better.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful. Clause 10 really is the engine driving a successful ISMS, isn't it?
It really is.
Okay, so for everyone listening, here's something to mull over. How effectively is your organization proactively looking for ways to improve security rather than just reacting to problems? And perhaps more importantly, how rigorously are you learning from any bumps in the road, any nonconformities you find? Maybe take a moment after this to reflect on your own practices there. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.